Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So as you can see, we're doing something a little different this episode. This is actually audio of an interview that was done with me by Ed of Ed's World. He was gracious enough to share the audio with me so I could share it with you guys. And I wanted to go ahead and throw it up as an episode because we do talk about a couple different topics that I don't normally talk about. And he asked me some things that I don't normally get asked. So I thought it would be interesting for you guys to be able to have it too. So I will go ahead and put all of his information in the show notes so that you can link to his channel and everything. So without further ado, here is the audio of my interview with Ed from Ed's World.
Good morning and welcome to Ed's World. I say morning because at Ed's World, it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I've got a wonderful guest with me today. I've got Jen the Libertarian to come and talk about the current events of the week. This is actually the second iteration of the script that I wrote up for us, so bear with us as everything changed in the last 48 hours and see what we can do. Jen, how are we doing today?
Good, how you doing?
As always, you can see this on YouTube as the way that you're looking at it right now, or you can listen to this on the audio platforms. We are on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play. I don't really have any announcements right now. I know I'm going to be having Stephen Ignoramus on next week, and he's already preparing for the news that's going to be coming on. Jen, do you have any announcements?
Not at present, no. I'll try to think of something while we talk.
Well, we do have a full load of topics, as I mentioned before. I didn't even do an on the bubble topic this time, so we will be going through all 5 topics that we have here. Canada has introduced a new libertarian party called the People's Party of Canada. As somebody who tags herself as the Libertarian on her podcast, I wanted to get Jen's opinion on all of this, so we'll be talking about that to start with. There was an assault on a conservative student at Berkeley this week. We'll be talking about that, and maybe we'll be drawing some parallels to the Jussie Smollett case, because that seems to be something that's highly parallel in this. Donald Trump has a couple of big items from the last week that most of us haven't really had a chance to talk about, including a bill that may possibly defund Planned Parenthood, so we'll look into how that works. YouTube has decided that they're going to screw with all of us with one major content strike to a major content creator and a new regulation that may affect all of us. And to close out, we will be looking at 2020 and seeing how that's going to be shaking out, especially with the fact that Bernie Sanders is now entering into the race. It's going to be all this and more on this totally unscripted and completely surprise episode of Ed's World. But let's start out with the important parts. Jen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am Jen the Libertarian, although I did just change my name on Twitter to be part of my last name. So I am no longer anonymous on the internet. But I do have my Twitter feed. You can still probably find me under Jen the Libertarian. If not, you can find me under Jen Monroe. I do have my podcast, Jen the Libertarian. And basically I cover a lot of political stuff. Sometimes I do a little more evergreen stuff. I typically do like a weekly roundup. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
How did you get into alternative media? That's one question I love to ask all of my guests, because everybody's got a different story, but we all wind up in the same place.
Yeah, I originally started making YouTube videos probably about a little over a year ago now, and they are no longer on YouTube, so no, you cannot find them. But I started that basically as kind of a thing to do because I wasn't employed at the time, so I was kind of looking for ways to fill my day, so I started doing that. And I found that I enjoyed doing it, but podcasting is a lot easier on the logistical side of things. It's a lot easier to process and do audio than it is to do video. So I started doing that. I pivoted over to podcasting. And I've been doing that for a little under a year now. I believe my first one was in May of last year. So we're not quite at a year yet. And that's kind of how I got into that. And then that was an offshoot of being on Twitter. And I was kind of looking for something of a way to like express myself in a more long form fashion than what Twitter allows for. So that's kind of how that got started.
Well, you've been on the podcast studios a little bit longer than I've been on YouTube, so because I started right after Parkland.
Oh yeah, so you've not been quite a year either.
Just shy at this point.
Yeah.
I got to look and see when my first video came out, but I got to be pushing right on my first anniversary.
Yeah, because I think they just did the first anniversary of Parkland.
That was Valentine's Day.
Yeah, but say last week. So it's when you follow the news cycle, days kind of squish into each other, and so you're never quite sure how long ago things were actually for like normal people.
Oh, geez, I know completely. Like I said, when I tried to make up our itinerary and completely gutted it and changed it a day later.
Yeah, it's so hard with these news cycles. It's like what do you cover? What do you do? Like I said, I just open up a note, just start doing it throughout the week, and then by the time I sit down to do it, normally I do like my weekly roundup stuff on either like a Wednesday or Thursday. I just look at it and be like, okay, what's still relevant? What do I still want to talk about? And just kind of go from there. Because that's really all you can do at this point. Like the news cycle goes so fast that it's like something can happen not even a week ago and then like nobody's talking about it anymore.
And that tends to be how it goes. But I did want to start out with a topic that isn't necessarily news because it's a couple months old at this point, but something that's generally, I think, interesting in the way that the world is going. But if you're all set with how your story went and your bio, if you want to get into topics right away.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, let's start out with where I just said we were going to start out. Canada has introduced a new political party formed by former... What did he say he was? I just looked this up. I can't believe I can't remember this. Former government official Maxime Bernier. And I thought this was an interesting idea because we saw UKIP jump up in the United Kingdom. And there's just been a general feeling of libertarianism around the country. I know this isn't exactly a libertarian party because Bernier said himself that he's not for open borders. I believe that you are more into that than I may be for chance, but I just thought it was an interesting idea. What do you think about the People's Party of Canada?
I think it's interesting, and I'm always interested to see, like, especially in other countries where there is a more robust kind of market for third parties and even fourth parties, fifth parties, however you want to do it, because they're not so wedded to like the duopoly the way we are here in the U.S. Like you have Democrats, Republicans, and then you have various other third parties, but it's really hard to gain traction as a third party. Whereas opposed to like in Canada and also in Europe, there's more of a tradition of having like 3, 4, 5 major parties running in any particular election. So on that note, it's pretty interesting. I'm curious to see how libertarianism would look in Canada, just because they are already starting from kind of an even further disadvantage than we are here in the U.S., because obviously Canada is a much more socialist country than the United States is. So they've got the work cut out for them even more than we do. So I'm really interested to see how exactly that's going to pan out and how that's really going to look in practice in order to try to gain some kind of traction, to try to gain supporters in a country where a lot of the ideas that libertarians have here in this country, I don't think are going to fly so well in Canada. So it'll be interesting. Definitely, for sure.
Well, I always say, too, that libertarianism is basically a United States idea because we were founded on the idea of making a small government because we didn't want to throw our taxes and all of our decision-making to one big overarching government that was thousands of miles away. The rest of the world seems to be okay with that, so their right and their left are observed differently. The right is obviously tends to be more nationalist and the left tends to be more globalist in other countries. We're the only country in the world that I know of that has a right and a left that talks more about big government and small government than globalism and nationalism.
And sadly, I'm thinking that's beginning to change here in the U.S. It seems we don't really have a small government major party anymore. I think Republicans have pretty much abandoned that at this point, sadly. And it is more of like a nationalist versus globalist and kind of like a populist versus more multicultural sort of thing. And I think that is something that is sorely missing in the United States. And it's something that I bemoan because it's like nobody speaks on fiscal issues anymore. Nobody really talks about shrinking government. Nobody worries about the deficit anymore. Nobody worries about the debt. It's everything is kind of revolving around these cultural issues. And that's how people are getting elected and also how people are losing office. And it's like we've gotten so far away from where this whole American experiment started, which was the idea of taxation without representation. I mean, that's pretty much how the whole Revolutionary War started. Mm-hmm. But now we're at this point where it's like everybody's kind of abandoned the idea of actually cutting spending. I mean, obviously the Republicans just passed a bill to cut taxes, but there was no spending cuts. So actually that just kind of made things worse, if we're going to be honest. But yeah, I would like to see there actually go back to being like a big government, small government party. Like I would like to see that happen.
Well, and I would too. And when I talked to Wyatt last week, I brought up, we were talking about the fact that Trump had signed the continuing resolution, and I accidentally said budget while I was saying it and corrected myself by saying, my God, we don't pass budgets anymore.
No, we don't do that anymore. It's been over a decade at this point, if memory serves.
I don't think it's, I think Obama did have a budget in his first term, but yeah, after that it was gone.
Yeah, we just do CR after CR after CR, and nobody actually passes a budget anymore. It's really freaking ridiculous, honestly.
I remember that one of the big things too when I was growing up. I think you're a little older than I am, but yeah, growing up, everyone was so excited with the fact that Bill Clinton balanced the budget. That was the most exciting thing in the world.
Yeah, actually ran a surplus there for a minute.
Yeah.
Amazingly enough. But yeah, but like I said, nobody cares about spending anymore. Nobody cares about fiscal issues. So it's just kind of these things that, and even now, like the continuing resolutions are all based around these ideas. Like the last one is based around border wall funding. It goes back to these cultural issues that have nothing to do with actual like fiscal restraint or anything, or actually like budgeting, or can we actually afford things. It's all about trying to make this larger cultural populist point through budgetary spending. And it's like, no, we can't afford these things. So it should be a non-starter, honestly, because we can't afford them, but nobody cares about that anymore, apparently.
Going back to the People's Party of Canada, how do you think that's going to be received by the people of Canada? I do have a friend that lives over in the West Provinces where this seems to be picking up steam and taking off. But, she's kind of avoided the topic a little bit. I don't think she knows exactly what's going on with that. But I look at things like UKIP, where they're just completely demonized as this Hitler-esque sort of thing. And I don't necessarily see that as being the case, but I also see a lot of that come towards libertarians who tend to associate with the right down here as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I can see it taking off, like you were saying, more in the western provinces than the eastern ones, just because there is kind of more... It's a different atmosphere kind of on the west coast than it is on the eastern coast. Mm-hmm. But as far as demonizing it, I guess that's something that remains to be seen. I mean, I guess if you start having members of the party kind of come out and be like, okay, we need to start rolling back healthcare spending, or we need to start rolling back the welfare state, you might start to see a lot of pushback along those lines of, oh, you're just... I don't even know how Canadians would phrase it. They're so nice. Like, I can't imagine how Canadians would insult people. They're too nice.
I feel like they would have the A at the end of it, no matter what.
Like, why are you trying to take away my healthcare, eh?
Well, that was actually something that I wanted to bring up and ask you when this was coming up. Do you think Canada actually has it in them to repeal their state health care?
That is going to be a really, really big ask right now. I mean, it's something... I mean, there would have to be a lot of political will to do it right now in Canada, and I don't really see that happening. But that's not to say that at some point in the future that maybe something won't happen to where I don't know, it starts becoming more insolvent or there starts to be financial issues. I know they kind of have issues as far as like wait times and stuff like that. If it's something that gets progressively worse, then you might start seeing people kind of getting behind that idea. But as it stands right now, I don't know, because it's just like any entitlement spending. Like once it's in place and once people get used to it, like the same way Obamacare is here in the States, it's like once people get used to that, then even if it wasn't super popular in the first place, all of a sudden, like the political will for actually rolling it back disappears. So it's definitely going to be an uphill climb for Canadians to do that.
Before I get out of this topic, I do want to ask one other idea, because, we obviously had the American experiment here, and that seems to be what started that, but we also we have UKIP that's starting to pop up, and now Bernier is starting to do this, and they're having the riots over in France, which may lead to a revolution that might start this. Do you think you could see this start happening elsewhere in the world, different places like Germany, God help us, if Merkel ever gets out of the way, and places like that, or the Scandinavian countries that Bernie Sanders loves?
Yeah, especially like the EU countries. I really don't know what to say about them now because it's kind of a mess. It's really, I think a lot is going to hinge on whether Brexit does end up happening or not. I think if it does happen, then you're going to start seeing a lot of instability in the EU if they do end up pulling out. I know it's kind of like a up in the air thing right now where they're trying to avoid it now. I saw today that Labour Party is actually getting behind doing another vote basically on Brexit. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think a lot of that's going to depend on what Britain ends up doing, but especially like in a lot of what's going on in France right now is a little disconcerting. I mean, it's taking some rather ugly turns that I don't really approve of. I mean, I'm all for people protesting against taxation and stuff like that, but I think when it first started, when the Yellow Vest riots first started, I saw kind of like strains of Tea Party-ish sort of thought. And when I say that, I mean that like when people were doing the Tea Party protests, like it was about taxes, but it wasn't about taxes. Like there was a lot of other things it was about. And it seems like that's where the Yellow Vest started, but now it's kind of morphing into this weird kind of like anti-Semitic kind of strain going on, which is something that is going on in Europe. That's kind of the last time anti-Semitism took hold in Europe, it ended pretty badly. So
sure did.
I'm hoping, yeah, that didn't end well for anybody. So I'm kind of hoping that doesn't get any bigger than it is right now. But like I said, it's just the EU situation is so unstable right now that I don't think anybody can make any predictions on it.
Well, and the Yellow Vest too, that that's good and important. I think that's good for the French people. I think that's going to do well for them. But like you said, it doesn't have quite the class and the panache as throwing crates of tea into the Boston Harbor.
Yeah, and it's getting kind of violent. I mean, they are attacking people. They are setting things on fire. So it's not a super benign protest. But like I said, it's interesting to see. And I'm wondering, like I said, I think a lot of this hinges on Brexit, honestly.
You mean Brexit, like you keep voting until you vote the right way?
I guess. I mean, I don't know how that works. Can we do that here? Like, do we get mulligans here? Can we do a redo on 2016? Like, that's what I don't understand about this situation. It's like, okay, they voted, and while this vote may not have been the wisest thing in the world, it's the vote. Like, how we're just going to just vote and vote and vote until you get the answer you're looking for? Like, that's not how voting works.
That reminds me of a Dr. Seuss-like poem that they were trying to do while they were doing the recounts down in Florida.
Oh my God! Yeah, I was. Well, when you say the recounts, which time are you referring to? First of all,
Gore.
Yeah, I was down there. I was part of that. That was the first time I ever voted as an adult. I was 18 in 2000, and I lived in South Florida, so I was part of that whole melee. It was interesting. I learned a lot about voting. Let's say that.
I'll count and count and count again. I'll count until the state is mine.
Yeah, I remember the dangling chads and all the fun we had with that. And did they punch this? Did they not punch it? It's kind of half punched. Does it count? Yeah, it was just, that was a disaster. That was crazy.
Maybe the Russians put the hanging chads on there.
No. No, they just hack election machines now, apparently, and post memes on Facebook.
$1,000 swayed the election.
I'm sure every political candidate wishes it was that cheap and easy. Let me tell you what.
Some of the political candidates are that cheap and easy.
But yeah, I mean that's and the whole Russia thing. I mean, maybe one of these days the investigation will be over. We thought it was going to be over this week, but apparently they're not releasing the report this week. I don't know anymore. It's so crazy.
Well, I had a transition in mind here, but we got off onto another topic here, talking about the yellow vests, of course, because political violence has become very real in this country as well. We saw a story this past week of a student from Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens' pet project, get assaulted violently on the campus of Berkeley by a person who, as far as I know, has yet to be caught or punished. Berkeley seems that they're going to be pursuing punishment for that, but they have yet to get the suspect into custody and punish him. It was a pretty nasty fight, too. I was kind of impressed by the physical prowess of both members and the fact that the guy stayed standing after he was getting wailed on. Did you get to see the video on that?
Yeah, and that's another thing that's kind of interesting. They're still looking for this dude. I'm like, everybody has seen this video. Like, how hard is it to find this dude? Like, it's gone viral. Somebody has to know who this guy is. But yeah, and it's obviously not the first time violence has happened at Berkeley related to conservatism and stuff like that. But
or politics in general.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother ball of wax. But yeah, it's kind of depressing to see because I don't agree with putting your hands on people just because you don't like what they say. Like, just keep it moving. Like, you don't have to physically fight somebody. Like, that's ridiculous. But there is that kind of environment, and there are people who feel like they are entitled to do all sorts of just bad, evil shit to people. Like, you feel like you can beat people up. You feel like you can dox them. You feel like you can get them fired because you disagree with what they say. And that's like, that's not okay. Like, can we please stop doing that?
And now I'm seeing people on the right, on Twitter especially, try to do the doxing too. I'm like, come on, people. This isn't what we were brought up into.
No, I mean, I'm so old. I remember that the worst things that you could possibly do to somebody online would be to dox them or to out them. And so it's still like you're putting somebody's personal information on the internet, and that's like, people can get hurt doing that. And that's how, like, doxing that ends up leading to swatting, which has gotten people killed. And that's just like, that's not, I don't understand that mentality at all.
Oh, I mean, because I just moved to the town I moved in, and one of the first things I did, I went over to the police station and said, okay, this is who I am. This is what I do. My channel is very small right now, but I'm hoping to grow it at some point. But I have the wrong opinion for online. Here's my key. Don't come in unless you have a warrant, but if somebody calls and says this is happening, here's my personal phone number. Call me. I assure you I'm not going to take anybody hostage or anything, and if I don't answer the phone, come and have a look. You can see through the windows and the trees.
Yeah, I don't understand if people that do that don't understand the consequences of it, or they do and they don't care. Like, it's just, like I said, people have gotten killed being swatted. I mean, there's a case pending right now where somebody got killed being swatted. Like, this isn't a game. Like, you don't call the police over to somebody's house and tell them that some crazy shit's happening, and then SWAT shows up, and, I mean, that's going to end badly. I mean, it just is.
Well, I mean, I've seen the other side of it, too, the incompetence of SWAT, so maybe that I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and possibly they're just hoping that it's going to be an incompetent SWAT team. I mean, in the little tiny town that I grew up in northern Wisconsin, the SWAT team stood outside and held a dead guy at bay for 5 hours. He shot himself in the head shortly before the SWAT team showed up.
Oh my God. Well, at least I guess maybe that's better than the alternative of them ramming the door down and running in guns blazing. I mean, I guess there's that. I mean, yeah, it's just it's such a volatile situation, and especially when you start calling in the state on people. It's just like, don't do that. That's no, that's not okay. Like that's not cool.
Well, I look at this too, and I'm like, okay, this is an actual political attack based on one external characteristic. All that as far as I know, all the guy that was attacking knew was that, okay, this kid is conservative, and I can't imagine that this is all that different from what Jussie Smollett tried to give us when he was trying to build his narrative, even though that wound up being false. I think that was the idea that he was trying to put across to us.
Yeah, and that whole situation, I know I've talked about it a lot on my own podcast, but that is just one of the most batshit crazy things I think we've seen in a long time. Just because this is somebody who was already visible, already famous, like, what did you think that you were going to accomplish? Like, did you really think that you were going to get away with this, dude? Like, I don't even understand that. But yeah, at least in the Berkeley case, well, I mean, I say at least, that's probably not the right term, but at least that actually happened. Like,
Yeah.
that really happened. Like, that guy really got punched in the face. Unlike the Jesse Smollett situation, where it appears now, and I think there's enough evidence out there now that we can all pretty much comfortably say this was a hoax. Like, obviously, you wrote a check to these guys. They've got surveillance footage of these guys buying the ski masks and the MAGA hats and the rope and everything. And I'm assuming that a lot of the information that Chicago PD has, they got from those two guys. I hear they actually talked to Smollett's family too, and they kind of dropped dime on him. So, but it's just like there's enough bad things happening in the world. Like, you don't have to make things up. Like, that's so. I don't know where he was going with that. Like, I really don't understand it.
Well, and I mean, hoax hate has been a big topic for a very long time, from what I understand too. I mean, I started hearing about it not that long ago, but I know there were other cases that went on before even the cases that I started hearing about it, and it's become more and more common. Hoax hate is so common at this point. I don't know if you've ever seen Matt Christensen's show or not over on YouTube.
I don't.
Has-
Yeah, I don't watch it, but
Yeah, he's got a weekly segment called Hoax Hate Crime of the Week. And it happens so
yeah,
often,
and I
he's
mean,
even got a sounder to introduce it.
that's bad. But yeah, and it's I think that, and especially in the wake of the Smollett situation, there's been a lot of people talking about this concept, and that's the idea of being a victim, of victimization, being a certain kind of social currency that is very, very valuable right now. So if you don't have it organically, you might be tempted to go and do some fakery so that you can be a victim, so that you can have this narrative about yourself, so that people pay attention to you and they put like more credence on what you say because you are a victim of whatever the thing is that you are portraying yourself to be a victim of. Which that's really a pretty sick mentality, to think that being a victim now is this glorified thing in society, and that people are willing to do hoaxes in order to become victims of something. I don't know what you do about that, but it's a really weird place we've gotten to in society.
Well, and you look at people on the right too are generally more victimized than actual real things, but for the most part, and I can't say all, and I'll touch on that in just a second here, but I mean, for the most part, we're not going around and talking about it. We take the victimization, we pick ourselves up, and we go back to work. Unlike everybody's.
Some people do, but some people don't.
Are you thinking of the same person I am? A guy that wears a funny half hat and was the number one victim of alt-right violence?
Oh, there's plenty of people on the right that lean into the whole victimhood culture too, and about how, look, the left is so mean to us and they deplatform us. And I mean, there is something to that, but the right has also bought into that victimization culture too, and that's no, stop it. Stop it. Just don't do that.
Ben Shapiro. Gang, I was the number one target of anti-Semitism and alt-right violence all across 2016.
Yeah, and yet here you are. But and that's not to say that people that complain about deplatforming and stuff like that don't have a valid point, but Ben Shapiro doesn't really have a valid point right here. Like, you get how many downloads a month, dude? Like, I would kill to have his numbers.
I think a lot of us would. I would kill for you and I to have those numbers combined.
I know,
at this point.
right? I think the last stat I saw is he gets 15 million downloads a month.
I might contribute to that.
I never really listened to his stuff. Like, I don't know. I can't. His voice, like, just slow down, dude. Just slow down. It's almost like it's like listening to a normal podcast if you put it at like 1.5 speed. That's like Ben Shapiro just at normal speed on his podcast. It's like, it's your platform, dude. Nobody's kicking you off. You don't have to try to, like, just slow down. Slow down. Nobody's gonna, like, pull your plug.
Speaking of Matt's show, and I know we're going to talk about this later, one of the super chatters, and this is stuck in my memory since they did it, one of the super chatters went in and made a suggestion that we make a new show called Ben Shapiro Gets Blacked, where they just transcribe the whole script and have a smooth, soulful black guy read the whole thing back, so we get to hear all the news, but don't have to listen to Ben's voice.
Like, get like a Morgan Freeman to do it.
There you go.
Get Morgan Freeman to do Ben Shapiro. That would be great.
There you go.
Well,
Yeah,
you see, the leading cause of anti-Semitism in America.
And he's one of the people who's been victimized for going to Berkeley too. Like, they just about burned that school down because he was going there.
Yeah, and I mean, and obviously, I think the biggest incident that happened on Berkeley was when they tried to have Milo go on, and that's when they really, like, rioted and started setting things on fire and breaking windows and stuff like that, which, what did you accomplish? What did you accomplish by doing that? Like, I don't get protesting like that. Like, okay, well, he didn't go speak at your school, but now he's way more famous than he would have been if you had just let him speak and just ignored him. Like, I don't understand why these people don't understand that when you do these kinds of protests, all you're doing is giving these people more fame, more notoriety, another axe to grind, another thing to hold up and be like, look, we are being victimized. We are being deplatformed. We are being disinvited. So it's like you're just buying into their narratives. Like, do you not understand that?
Well, no, and they're getting the news coverage, obviously. They're getting the news coverage to say that this is an evil person that shouldn't have a platform, in turn giving him a platform.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, congratulations, you accomplished the exact opposite of what you were trying to accomplish.
I've got to ask while we're on this topic here, because I hear a lot of differing opinions about the organization. What do you think about TPUSA in general?
I could probably do a whole episode on my feelings on TPUSA in general, but I think that where they are taking the conservative movement is nowhere good. I mean, what is supposed to come of trolling and owning the libs? Like, that's all it is. Like, that's all you're doing. And what kind of cohesive policy platform are you supposed to get out of that? Like, one day Trump is not going to be in office, one way or the other, whether it happens in 2020, whether it happens in 2024, he's not going to be there anymore. Then what are you going to do? I mean, it makes no sense to me. Like, there's no promoting of actual conservatism, at least not conservatism as I always understood it growing up. It's all just about reactionary politics and trying to piss people off and trying to own the libs and do all that shit. And it's like, that's not sustainable. Like, you're not really teaching these young kids anything as far as conservative principles. Like, I don't understand what their end game is.
Well, I presume that what they're going to do once Trump is out of office is have Candace Owens try and take over the mind of another prominent rapper and push him too far so he turns his back on everybody again.
I mean, I just don't see, there's no promoting of any kind of actual conservative values coming out of them as far as I can see.
Breaking news, Charlie Kirk just unfollowed me.
That would, if I could ever get like Charlie Kirk or Candace Owens to block me, that might be like the best day of my life. That would definitely be like my best block ever.
Well, I do hate to talk a whole lot of crap on them because Charlie Kirk was actually my first blue check follower, but Charlie Kirk follows me. I don't know why.
Wow, I no, he does not follow me. Nor will he probably ever. In fact, I'd probably have more of a chance of getting blocked by him than ever getting followed by him. And I'm okay with that.
Godspeed. Well, you said that Trump is not going to be president forever, and we all know this, but he has been making some pretty hefty news over the last couple weeks. I know you've done almost an entire show on the first topic I want to discuss there, but I don't know if he tried to redeem himself with this or what he tried to do with the conservative movement with this other item, but let's start with the continuing resolution and the border funding, because I know you've got a lot to say about that.
Yeah, we ended up kind of getting the worst of both worlds on this one, because we got the crappy spending bill and we got a national emergency, so that really sucks. But yeah, as far as like the CR, I mean, it's a spending bill. It's didn't give him what he wanted, so he decided to declare a national emergency so he can get his shiny wall, which sets an awful precedent that will be used by the next president. Nancy Pelosi has already said that next time a Democrat's in office, they will use this national emergency to try to push through climate change legislation, push through gun control legislation. So thanks for ringing that bell. And then also, I mean, CRs being CRs, there's plenty of pork in there to go around. There's plenty of shit that has nothing to do with border walls or funding or anything like that for border protection. And so it's really kind of depressing all the way around, honestly. And I'm interested to see exactly how the national emergency part's going to play down, because I know the House passed a resolution to turn it over. I don't know. I think it's in Senate. I don't think it's going to make it out of the Senate, but we shall see. So I'm interested to see how that turns out, and then to see what Trump does in relationship to that, because of course he could always veto it and leave the national emergency in place. But yeah, that's kind of a disaster.
Well, I mean, we're currently sitting under 31 national emergencies right now. I mean, this wasn't a new thing like they were trying to advertise it on Twitter. I fell into the trap of everyone saying, well, this is a new thing. This is something that's never happened. Every president since the National Emergencies Act of 1976, aside from Ford, who signed it into place, has had at least one national emergency.
True, but this one is different in the way that, first of all, disagree with me if you want, there is no national emergency, first and foremost. This is not a national emergency. What it is just a naked power grab by Trump because he wants this one thing, because he wants this to be his legacy. So you're using legitimate national emergency powers that should be saved for national emergencies, basically to fund your pet project. And like I said, it will be abused in the future, just like when you nuke the filibuster. Like, you know, going forward, it's going to be used against you. This will be used against Republicans the next time a Democrat's in office. And that's my problem with it. It's like, this was not like when Bush declared a national emergency to set up like the Department of Homeland Security and stuff like that. This was just a naked power grab because Congress wouldn't give Trump what he wanted. So that's a little problematic. That's pretty concerning.
With all due respect, how is Bush using the national emergency to set up the Department of Homeland Security not a naked power grab?
It was, but at least you had the cover of 9/11. Like, he could actually declare something of a national emergency to do it. Whereas on this, I mean, I don't know how you spin the border situation as a national emergency. The way that obviously Bush could do because he had the cover of 9/11. And I know a lot of the other national emergencies, some of them are just, I was reading a list of them the other day, and some of them were just like kind of dumb, like banning diamonds from Sierra Leone because of how they were mined. I'm like, that's not really a national emergency either, but okay, I'm okay. But yeah, this one, just the reasoning and the rationale behind it, this is going to come back to bite him in the ass. It definitely will.
See, I look at it a little bit differently, and completely honestly, with what... There's a little bit of tinfoil hattery that goes along when I say this, but I look at the... maybe it's 40 chess, maybe it is just, like you said, a naked power grab, but we're learning about the fact that there is a National Emergencies Act. Did you know that there was such an act before any of this happened?
Mm-hmm.
I
But then
did.
again, the libertarians are nerdy like that, so
I think a lot of the general American population didn't know about it. I don't think Trump knew about it. I don't know that necessarily he was listening to Rush and Rush was the one that told him about it, but I bet you one of his staffers listened to it and put the put the dime in his ear to say, "Hey, this is something you could possibly do." But furthermore, it's things like the National Emergencies Act, and there are so many other things that have gone on in the Trump presidency that are completely legal, have passed Congress, and have passed the Supreme Court to do so, but most of America didn't know about it, and now they're on everybody's mind. Some of these things are going to get defined, either get repealed, which I think the National Emergencies Act is going to get repealed out of this. I think Nancy Pelosi is going to look at this and say, we can either use this to our advantage the next time, or we can turn around and get rid of this because this is going to be used against us to do something that we don't like. I think that stands a very big possibility of getting repealed at this point.
I think that's playing a little bit of a longer game than anybody in Congress is actually willing to play. And I mean, I'm sure Nancy Pelosi would be happy to keep that in her deck going forward for any future Democratic president, which, I mean, obviously at some point in the future, there will be another Democratic president, let's be honest, probably in 2024. But I mean, I don't see them taking that away from the president because I don't think that there's going to be enough political will to do it, unfortunately. I mean, I would like to see it happen, but I don't think you're going to be able to get enough people on board because there's always going to be that but contingency. Like, well, what if there is a real national emergency and Congress just doesn't have time to get together and write a bill and pass it and get it to the president's desk because this takes time and there's an emergency happening right now. Like, I can see people using that as an excuse to not take those emergency powers away from the president.
Well, the other interesting side of that is right now there are, when I made the notes, there were 16 states that were suing the presidency over it. Obviously, everyone on social media has looked at that and said, okay, here's your electoral map. Here are the 16 states that are suing the president right now. But if they're suing the president, it's going to go through appeals. It's going to get to the appeals court. And the Ninth Circuit is working on blocking that, which, to my understanding, executive orders had to go straight to the Supreme Court, and lower courts were not supposed to be able to block them. I don't know when that changed, but there's a chance
it's probably going to end up a lot. Go ahead.
There's a chance this gets to the Supreme Court, and either they force a definition, which kicks it back to Congress and makes them rewrite the code to make it in, or it gets declared as unconstitutional. The president is not a monarch. And looking at the articles,
I think this will end up. It will make it back to the Supreme Court the same way the asylum ban did. Which, I mean, this will basically take the same path I would imagine that did, where it did go through lower courts, went through Ninth Circuit, went to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court upheld it. Whether they'll uphold this or not, that remains to be seen. And I kind of think it remains to be seen. Like, it's definitely going to be like, how long is this going to take? Like, how... Because I think the Supreme Court situation is kind of interesting right now. I mean, everybody's looking at Ruth Bader Ginsburg like every day, kind of like doing a wellness check on her. Kind of like, is she still alive? Is she still here? Is she retiring? Like, everybody's just kind of like, I mean, I don't want it to sound morbid, but waiting for her to either like retire or die. And so it's kind of like this weird, like, trying to run out the clock thing, because I think it's going to be pretty obvious that Trump is going to be the one to replace her, and then that's going to just that's going to be Trump's legacy, as far as I'm concerned, is how many people he's going to end up putting on the Supreme Court. And right now, I'm saying 4, and that's going to be massive.
Who do you think 4 is going to be?
I don't think Ginsburg's going to be able to make it out.
That one I knew.
I don't think Breyer's going to pull out either. I don't think he's going to make it, because I think Trump is going to win in 2020. And I don't think either one of those two are going to be able to wait out a Trump presidency. So, yeah, that can be incredibly significant.
Did you see that they saw Ginsburg up and walking around in an airport?
Yeah, I saw that. It's so funny now. Like TMZ follows Ginsburg around now just to make sure she's still alive and kicking. I'm like, this is getting ridiculous, guys.
Have you ever heard the Avril Lavigne conspiracy theory?
No.
I was listening to this on another podcast, actually. There's a conspiracy theory that shortly after her career launched, Avril Lavigne died, and they put a stand-in her place, and that's why the music changed. That's why she looks slightly different, and all this stuff. I think they did that to Ginsburg.
It's possible. Maybe there's a body double. Maybe they're gonna do her like Darth Vader. Like they're just gonna keep her alive, just putting her in a suit. I don't know, but it's starting to be kind of comical to watch because, like I said, it's like everybody's like looking at her and everybody's watching her. It's like, where's Ruth? Did anybody see Ruth? Is Ruth still alive? Did she fall down again? Is she in the hospital? Is she at the gym? What's she doing?
Well, that raises an interesting question, though. Do you think they can hire James Earl Jones to do the voice generator for her? Because how epic would that be?
I put nothing past them at this point with this woman. I mean, they're just like, I saw like people online offering to like donate organs to this woman to keep her alive, and I'm like, that's not how this works, guys. That's not how you cheat death. But okay, good going, guys.
How much of a Trek nerd are you?
Fairly. I mean, I definitely know more about Star Trek than Star Wars. I'll put it that way.
Do you remember the species in the first season of I think it was the second season of Voyager? What the hell? That had the disease where they were harvesting organs from every ship that passed by?
No, but that sounds about right.
I think that's what they're trying to do with Ginsburg. Harvest the organs and keep her going.
Yeah, just anything to keep her alive. Let's make another movie about her. That'll do it. I'm just like, now they make movies about her, too. And she's got an action figure. She's a Supreme Court justice.
They make movies about everybody. Cortez is selling a series to Netflix. I don't know how.
Oh, my God.
For $10 million.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I saw that. It was somebody had done a documentary. They were following her and a couple of the other women who were running. But obviously, I mean, the main selling point is AOC. So, yeah, I saw that they sold it to Netflix for $10 million. And I was like, I wonder if she gets any of that money. Because if I was her, I think I'd be a little pissed if I wasn't getting a cut of that.
As far as I understand, she gets all of it.
I don't know. I mean, I know it wasn't
bought her story
hers.
for. It was just the $10 million.
No, I know it was somebody. They were doing like a documentary on it, and it wasn't just solely about her. But I don't know. That's kind of one of those weird things where you got to get into like what kind of contract you signed before you started letting them film you, and blah 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 blah. But that'll be interesting to see. I mean, I don't think I'll watch the documentary. Honestly, we see enough of her on a daily basis. I don't really need to go on Netflix to watch her.
Well, I got this documentary, and it's gonna tell my great story from coming from nothing, and
Yeah, like, and I can't even make fun of her for saying like too much because I do that too. So but it's just like she's like the first like Instagram famous politician. It's so weird. I mean, and obviously it's also due to her age too. I mean, she's so young and she's so online, but it's like as much as I don't like her or her policies, I mean, she is redefining how politicians interact with their constituencies. And even like when you started seeing people announce for the Democratic field for 2020, I mean, you had Elizabeth Warren trying to do these videos in her kitchen where she's drinking beer and talking to people.
Was that Warren, or was that a robot that looked like Warren?
That was just so awkward and so stilted. And then you had Kamala Harris making these YouTube videos, and then you've got Beto doing Medium blog posts, and it's like it's changed how people are trying to appeal to the youngs, and it's like, no, please stop. It's just so cringy and awkward when like older people do it. Like that Elizabeth Warren one was just so bad. Like, it's just so staged. It was just like, wow, no, don't do that.
Well, I mean, it is changing how politicians reach out to their audiences, but I think it's going to change, too, the people who go to being in politics. I would not be surprised if, maybe not in 2020, but in 2022, some member of the alternative media runs for something and wins because...
Wouldn't shock me at all.
One of us goes to office.
In fact, people have been kind of like trying to speculate, like, okay, who's the first like online personality slash podcaster slash young TV personality who makes that leap to going and running for office, and how is that going to pan out for them?
I believe
I
that was
think
Reagan.
it might have been Trump,
But,
but
you know,
yeah,
I was thinking about running for state senate here this past time around. I just, because of a breakup, I had no idea where I was going to be living at the time, but I had the paperwork filed before my ex broke up with me.
yeah. I mean, I cannot see myself ever running for office just because how I feel about elected office. But I mean, more power to people that want to go that route. I mean, I don't fault anybody for doing it. If you want to try to change things that way, do you go for it? But that would never be something that I would do. I do think I can say never on that. There's not very many things I'll say never on, but yeah, I don't think running for office is ever going to happen.
Well, I mean, if you ran for office, you could get yourself into the fight to defund Planned Parenthood. Because that was the other thing that our president did this past week, just in the last couple of days.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how I don't think it's going to pass, to be honest, but my thing with Planned Parenthood, and I think that they should refuse federal funding in order to get the federal government out of their business. Like, if you are going to complain that the federal government puts regulations on you, then you have to stop taking their money. Like, you take their money, you have to accept their rules. So my thought's always been that, like, why doesn't Planned Parenthood say to Congress, like, I don't want your money anymore, and just privately fund? I mean, I don't love what Planned Parenthood does. I'm kind of like neutral on the idea of what they do and on abortion and stuff. I know that's really a hot button issue, but my whole thing has always been that, like, Planned Parenthood should turn their back on federal funding.
That's where they're making a lot of their money, though.
Yeah, I mean, I know they won't, but, and I mean, I think, especially a lot of the people who do kind of go the whole, well, we have to fund Planned Parenthood, and so, like, okay, well, why don't you go fund it? Like, why don't you go donate to them on a monthly basis? Like, that's something that kind of killed me, especially with, like, the women's marches and stuff, especially the first one. Like, so many women spent so much money going to this march and doing all this stuff, and it's like, you could have just donated that money to Planned Parenthood, and it would have actually been somewhat beneficial versus you going to DC and marching on the national lawn and accomplishing nothing.
Well, yeah, and you know, too, as well as I do, that if the government ever did come out and say, okay, no more funding for Planned Parenthood, Hollywood would have it funded by the next day.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's plenty of people who like Planned Parenthood and want it funded enough that, like, if you really, really care, like, you can donate. Like, they do take donations. Like, this doesn't have to be a federally funded thing. And like I said, I think it would be better for them if it wasn't.
Well, I was looking over this again before we went on mic. The law that Trump is trying to put into place is not necessarily a defund, but it's something that I guess could lead to a defund because it's a gag rule, essentially. It means that doctors can't refer patients to abortion providing services such as Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, and as always, legislation will always get changed, wording will always get changed, and what the final outcome of it will be, you will never know until it actually gets passed and then they actually make it public. So it's always kind of hard to judge pending legislation just because, somebody's going to do some sneaky 11th hour shit and, like, change it and do, like, little stealth edits and stuff like that. So what it will actually ultimately end up being and whether it will actually pass or not I think it remains to be seen.
Well, and that's the thing too. I know when I started doing my video on Northam, one of the first things that I brought up for the fact was I've always been pro-choice, but for different reasons. Obviously, I grew up in a union household, so I grew up as a Democrat, and that was just what we did at the time. We were Democrats. We cheered for abortion, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then when I got to adult, I started turning conservative. That was in 2008 when everything crashed, and I was like, okay, why are we talking about this? Nobody has a job right now. Fix that, and we'll talk about abortion afterwards. And now it's just, I look at it, a federal abortion ban would be a massive overreach of government power.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it should be turned back over to the states.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah, if anybody's going to make that choice, it should be the states. I mean, it should not be a federally mandated law that everybody has to do it in a certain way, because then again, you start stepping on the whole enumerated rights thing, and you start giving the federal government powers that isn't designated to them. And of course, obviously, the Constitution doesn't say anything about abortion, but it also doesn't grant them the ability to say anything about abortion either, which is the whole point of enumerated rights. So, yeah, if anything, it should be kicked back to the states.
I know as soon as the first article that I saw on this that got me talking about this says that, I mean, there are massive coalitions right now that are out there that are people just begging Congress to do something about this, to stop this, to make sure that this is a protected thing too.
Yeah, it's such a loaded topic, and it's one that it's not like I'm afraid to wade into it, because I mean, I do have my own opinions. It's just one of those that's like, I don't know how you change anybody's mind one way or the other. I mean, everybody has their opinion, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, there's plenty of pro-choice libertarians. There's plenty of pro-life libertarians, which a lot of people don't realize. It's like, yes, there are pro-life libertarians, and yes, there are quite a few of them. So it's one of those internal conflicts that I think you're going to see in every political party. And it's just one of those that's like, it's kind of a hot potato, and it just, I don't really have an answer for how you solve any of that, so I just kind of stay away from it, honestly.
Well, one thing that we can't really stay away from right now is the fact that the people who are providing this particular video for half of my audience to watch have got themselves into a little bit of hot water with their content creators on a couple of different topics here. YouTube has got into the news for a couple of different controversies. One is not so well known because it happened to one particular creator, so it only really goes along to his following. But the other controversy is something that may affect all of us down the line. I know you mirror your audio podcast onto YouTube as well. Mm-hmm. But let's start with a smaller one first. On Tuesday, before the regular stream of the call-in show for Beauty and the Beta, YouTuber Matt Christensen got a notice from YouTube that because of an unlisted video from 2 years ago talking about the situation in Chicago where those people beat up that handicapped kid and live streamed it on YouTube, he had that listed or unlisted on his channel so he could use it for reference later on. 97 hits on it on a channel that normally gets 10,000 hits per video. 97 hits on this video. Somebody got into this, found out about it, and Matt Christensen got a content strike for it, which would have, if it would have stayed through, suspended his streaming ability, which is most of his income right there, for 3 months.
Yeah, I've heard about this, and I know where you're going with this, so I'll let you get there in your own time. But I do have friends that are content creators on YouTube, and the whole YouTube strike situation has been kind of a mess for a long time, and it's always been kind of arbitrary and unfair. And you got the 3-strike rule, and people are getting kicked off, people are losing their live streams, all of this stuff, people are getting demonetized, and it's one of those where it's like, why can't YouTube like get it together? I mean, this is something that's been going on for years at this point, with people having all these various problems. It's like, get it together, guys. Like, get it fixed. Like, why is this so difficult?
Well, and my concern with this, and one of the reasons that I wanted to have this into the video and into this discussion, is just how it precipitated, because nobody really knows how it precipitated. I don't know if some random employee on YouTube was combing through various unlisted stuff, because obviously they can get into the unlisted videos the way that you and I couldn't. I mean, in order for you and I to have seen this video on his channel, he would have had to send the link to one of us, and we would have had to open it. There's no way to search for this video on his channel. Yeah, and yet it popped up like that.
Yeah, that's a problem a bunch, like all of social media, is the lack of transparency in reporting who gets reported, why it gets reported,
How it got
what
reported.
happens after you report things. Like, there's no transparency for you to know, like, even if you do want to try to arrange yourself in a way to not get reported, like, there's no way to do that because there's no rhyme or reason to what gets penalized and how and when. So, like, what are you supposed to do as a creator?
I mean, I've got everything mirrored to BitChute at this point because I know there's no consistency to it, and I've got the wrong think disease, of course.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just I don't. Like I said, it's a problem amongst all social media, and it's one of those, and especially for people who are on YouTube and have actually transitioned this into being like their job. Like, this is how they make their money. This is how they pay their bills. It's a very kind of like pernicious position to be in, and that's why I know a lot of people started having Patreons and subscribe stars and stuff like that, because there's no way of knowing from one day to the next. Like, you may wake up one morning and your channel is ghosted. Like, I've heard of people, like, I've seen that happen to people. Like, everything's just gone. Like, it's not even that they've been temporarily banned, permanently banned. They just deleted the whole channel. Like, everything's just gone. Like, and there's no way of knowing when it's going to happen to you, and there's no way of appealing it. So it's really leaving a lot of people kind of out in the cold with, like, okay, well, this was my job. This was how I make money. Like, what am I supposed to do now?
Well, and again, too, it's the money aspect runs right into it. And it runs into the other controversy that was going on because YouTube has announced a policy this past week as well. According to the new policy, comments that are left that you don't go through and comb through that are inappropriate, calls to violence, anything like that, anything that YouTube deems inappropriate can demonetize your video. This is an unprecedented thing. This came about because somebody was looking through a family channel, like this, I think it was this lady who was just making videos of her kids, putting them out there, and there were a bunch of pedophiles in the comments talking about how great they were, and YouTube found this and said, okay, you're cut off because you didn't comb through and you didn't get through this. And I keep thinking to myself, there are people out there that have 1 million subscribers. Do you think PewDiePie has time to go through every one of his comments and decide what can be approved and what can't be, and sort out the ones that are going to get him demonetized?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that is way, way too big of an ask for content creators because, I mean, how do you do that? Like, what? You're supposed to just sit there in front of your computer 24/7 and monitor your comments as they come in? Like, nobody has time for that. Like, I don't understand thinking that it should be a content creator's job to police their comment section. Like, I know a lot of people do for their own personal reasons, but to have to do it, like, that makes no sense to me. Like, I don't know how you would even ask somebody to do that.
Oh, apparently that's what they want to do. According to YouTube, it's because, we've got to protect the children, and that's where all of this came from. I mean, this was all right think. The whole thing that spawned this was all right think. This was just some lady that was discussing parenting and had her kids on her channel. And
yeah, and I mean, and obviously she did nothing to deserve that. I mean, I'm sure she didn't like the comments either. I mean, I would hate to put up like a video of my child. I don't have children, but if I did, and then a bunch of pedophiles commented, I would be like, oh my God, what have I done? But it's just, to me, asking content creators to police their comment section is YouTube kicking their responsibility onto content creators, which Lord knows they do that enough anyway. But if that's going to be on the YouTube comment system, then YouTube needs to be policing it, not expecting content creators to police it. Like, that's not their job. Like, their job's to create content. Your job is to create the platform and monitor for these comments and do all of that kind of stuff on the back end. Like, that's part of the bargain. Like, that's the deal.
And I really can't believe that some of these comments were getting through because, I mean, I've got a really small channel. I get maybe 4 or 5 comments a month. This past video I just put out on Bernie Sanders got a few more views than I normally get, and I got 3 comments on it. But the weird thing is, one of them was completely benign, but it got caught in the spam filter as being inappropriate. It was a very benign comment that was actually in favor of Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know how it got caught in there, but It got caught in there. I approved it, and yet people are talking about how hot a 10-year-old kid is, and that's getting right through and going out.
Yeah,
So
I
there are
guess.
filters in place to do this.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously there are the spam filters, but maybe YouTube thinks Tulsi Gabbard is a bigger threat than pedophiles. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, there you have the spam filters. Like, why isn't that being caught? Like, I don't like it catches all kinds of other dumb shit. Like, you can't catch the important shit. Like, I don't. But I think that also goes to a lot of the problems that everybody on social media has as far as trying to do filters and stuff like that. It's like they never work the way they're intended to. Like, nothing ever works the way it's supposed to. And so I know, like, on Twitter and on Facebook, they tried to move to actually having people do it. But of course, you can't keep up with that kind of volume, especially on Twitter and on Facebook and stuff like that, of having human beings monitor everything. And it's still kind of creepy even making that suggestion that there should be humans monitoring like every single tweet and every single post to make sure that they're correct in whatever way that you think they should be correct. But yeah, it's just YouTube has been a mess for a long time, and that's kind of another reason why I just stopped making videos. I mean, like, my channel wasn't huge or anything, like I didn't get a lot of views or anything, but it's kind of like, all right, if you're going to make certain kinds of content, then perhaps you should be thinking about the platform that you're using, the platform that you're making them on, and maybe going with podcasting is a little more safer than doing YouTube or doing anything like that. So, I mean, that's a choice that every content creator makes, though.
One of my Discord friends noted when I was pointing this out, two of us pointed it out right at the same time, and we got the same response to both of them. Maybe it's time to go and start spamming the N-word in the videos of creators that we don't like.
And see, that's the other thing, is it will get weaponized. Like, the same way that reporting tweets has gotten weaponized and reporting Facebook posts has gotten weaponized. It's like you're not doing it necessarily because there is something controversial in the post in and of itself. It's just you don't like this person, so you're going to go report this tweet, or you're going to report this post, or you could go spam their comments with like all kinds of vile stuff and get them demonetized or get them kicked off. And it's like, I mean, it's messed up to say, but yeah, there are people that will do that.
And Alphabet Incorporated does have the manpower to start looking into some of this stuff too. Going back to Matt there for a sec, because I can use him as an example on this. I was watching his Sunday stream one day when they first started doing a live stream or a live chat review, which I think they've fallen off of doing now. But I was watching the live stream and started realizing the fact that I kept seeing comment deleted, comment deleted, comment deleted. They had somebody monitoring the live stream and deleting comments for quality, and the trigger word that they were deleting comments for was Niger. Like the country.
See, that's it. Like, the comment filters never freaking work. It's always something stupid. Like, nobody's saying the N-word. They're saying the country. Like, you're still doing it wrong. There's one less G in Niger.
And I do believe that because I hang out in that I can't talk right now. I hang out in that live chat a lot, and I know the people that are in there, and they are trying to find the boundaries and push them. So, yes, every one of them started spamming the word Niger in the stream.
Like, you're going to get them kicked off. Stop it. You're going to get them deplatformed. Don't do that. But yeah, it's just like every other reporting system or any kind of thing like that. It's going to get abused, and then we're going to have this conversation again about what do you do about people who are abusing this system. And it's just like, it's a never-ending cycle. It's never-ending, and it's across all social media. And I don't know if they're ever going to really find a solution other than to just stop all of it, just let it all go, just stop trying to censor, stop trying to edit, stop trying to deplatform, just let everybody do what they're going to do, and everybody can just wall their own gardens as they see fit, and just take a hands-off approach.
I got my first content strike not that long ago.
No, I've never gotten one, but then again, I don't know, not to me. Like, I put up my stuff on YouTube just because it doesn't cost me anything, and it's just as easy as putting it up on any other platform, and sometimes I get more views than others on certain topics and stuff like that, but I don't think I've ever gotten a content strike. Like, not that I've ever noticed. So I'm sure I'm sure the day will come, especially with some of the topics that I've posted up. I'm sure that day will come.
Well, my transgression was usually if I take something from a mainstream source and put the video on to comment on it, under fair use, you can use a 10-second or a 30-second or even up to like a 5-minute clip of something from TV, and it's fair use. They can't do anything about it. So I took a 30-second clip of the Stephen Colbert Show and put it up without putting. Usually, I'll put it through Windows Movie Maker and put a cap on it and put a blur filter on it so they can't screw it. I didn't do it for that one, and CBS took it right back down.
Yeah, and I know YouTube's real funny about that kind of stuff too, as far as the DCMA and fair use and stuff like that, and how they crack down. And I know they were really, really, really cracking down a while ago, and then they kind of backed up off of that because so many people were complaining, and it was just, again, it's another one of those weird, uneven situations where you never know exactly what rule they're going to apply to you in what fashion and at what time. So YouTube is its own special little creature.
Well, it's not just YouTube. I mean, Twitter does a lot of the same thing. Facebook does a lot of the same thing right now. And I look at it, obviously I have all my videos backed up to BitChute. I've got a Gab account. I've got a Minds account. I never do anything on my Minds. But, I mean, I've got all these alternative media sites out there. But in reality, there's only a certain audience that's going to view my content on the alternative media sites. Or the alternative text sites. I guess this is on YouTube still technically an alternative media, but there are only certain people that are going to talk or view any of this. Whereas if I go on Twitter, I could actually have a discussion with somebody who thinks differently than I do so far that we would have an argument and a discussion. Having my video on BitChute means that I'm going to have all far-right, right-leaning, and conservative voices that are viewing it and patting me on the back for it. Putting it on YouTube means that somebody might see it, not like it, and engage a discussion with me in the comments section.
There is that, and it kind of also goes to the bigger point that a lot of people try to make, is that there are alternates to YouTube, there are alternates to Twitter, but if your audience isn't there, then it's kind of like, it's that catch-22, and I get people that complain about when Twitter silences people and when Facebook silences people, and again, it's another one of those where I think we really do need to start concentrating on helping out some of these other platforms. Like I do, I have a Minds account. Like I never post to it. I know I need to. I should start cultivating a following there, but I just never do because I'm so addicted to Twitter. But I know at any time my whole Twitter account can be nuked, and then I lose all of my contacts and all of my followers and all of my DMs, and it's just like, It's a rough one. It's tough. You got to diversify, but it's really hard to do it, and especially when you're looking at time crunch. Like, okay, I've got X amount of time in the day. Like, how many platforms can I post to? Like,
well, I know we're running on a time crunch right now, but you ready to get into the old man waiting in the corner topic?
Oh, sure, why not?
I always tend to try and put a 2020 watch on this show. I don't always usually leave it for the last topic, but because everybody has an opinion about the 97-year-old socialist from Vermont, I figure it was important that this was going to be the big topic for the night. This past week, Bernie Sanders announced in a video that he is officially going to be running for the presidency. As far as I know, he will be running as a Democrat. I thought that the DNC had rules that he couldn't do that anymore, but apparently he found a way around them. And he raised $6 million in the first 48 hours. I know you've talked about this on your show already because I listened to it. I put out a video about this yesterday. Let's have a discussion.
It's real interesting that he's in the race now, because there is this kind of dichotomy within the Democratic Party right now where, for better or for worse, Bernie's somewhat success in 2015, 2016 did radically alter the Democratic Party. And it kind of opened the door for like the Illa Ohans and the AOCs to come in and have this more socialist agenda, because they saw that Bernie did get all of this youth vote, this youth support. And so a lot of the field kind of shifted further left than they ever were before. But now here comes Bernie. And when you're running on Bernie's platform and now Bernie's in the race, like, how do you differentiate yourself from Bernie? And kind of the funny thing that I've seen happening, especially online, like, obviously in real life, he did raise a ton of money very fast, which says one thing about his candidacy. But then on the other hand, you have this core of younger, more democratic socialist sorts who are like, Bernie needs to go away and go sit down and just leave this to the younger people and to all the women that are running. And basically just like, Bernie is an old white man who needs to just go away already. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this actually plays out as far as like Democratic primaries and the debates and everything, to see kind of which faction ends up winning. Because obviously Bernie coming in, I think he is automatically the front runner. I mean, he's got the money, he's got the infrastructure, he's got the name recognition, he's got the platform. I mean, I don't really understand how anybody else is going to run on that platform now. I mean, I know Warren went to the left, Harris went to the left, Booker went to the left, but like now you've got kind of like the OG here. And I would imagine that he's going to point out at some point that all of these things that the Democratic Party is espousing now, he's been espousing for like decades, and all of the rest of you people just came here like 5 minutes ago. So I don't know how the rest of the field differentiates themselves from Bernie at this point.
Strategically, if I was Bernie, I would have waited a little bit longer to get into the race. And obviously, we all knew he was going to run. He's been teasing it since Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. He's been teasing this, but
and that was my first thought too. But I think with the way that they're doing the excuse me, words are escaping me. The debates, the primary debates. I think, if memory serves, they're starting in June. Mm-hmm. And I know that they had thresholds for being eligible to participate. He's far exceeded it by money. But I think the way that this whole election cycle is starting so early, it's causing people like Bernie to enter the race sooner than they would have under normal circumstances. Like, I think if it wasn't for the primary debates, then maybe he would have waited till maybe late March, early April, but then you're running up against a time crunch of being eligible for those debates. So that's why I think everybody announced so early in this cycle.
Well, the thing that would have, I maybe even would have skipped the first debate rather if I was Bernie, just based on the fact of the strategy that he had when he ran against Hillary Clinton. What he could have done if he'd have waited a little bit longer was wait for them to start formulating an actual platform, as many of them have already started to do, but get it out there, get starting to stand behind it, and then go run to the left of that and force them to correct. That's what he did with Hillary, and that's why he gained so much traction. I mean, at least 100,000 people in the country voted for him, but I speculate that that's a much bigger number than what the elections boards are telling us about. And election boards don't really keep track of write-ins the same way that, like, your Democrats, your Republicans, your Libertarians, and your Greens, like they would keep track of them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you make a point, like, he could have skipped those first debates and probably still would have been okay just on name recognition alone, but there are people that would have slammed him for doing it. Like, basically, kind of the same way Hillary got slammed for not going to all 50 states, like, the knock would be like, oh, you couldn't even show up to all the debates, so how serious are you? So, like I said, like, it's such a weird format they're doing this year, and it sucks because now the 2020 cycle is just going to be like a full, like, over a year and a half, and I'm just like, I'm not ready for this. This started in January, and I wasn't ready.
I wish people would stop talking about the fact that Hillary Clinton never went to Wisconsin during her tour, because if she does get in, which, let's face it, there's still a chance of doing that, we're never going to get rid of her.
Oh my God. She's going to live in Wisconsin.
Stop suggesting she come here.
Oh, if she does it, she'll visit all 50 states this time, I promise. Twice. But yeah, it's crazy. Like it's even down here in Georgia because we are slightly purplish now. Like I know Warren just did an event down here. Obviously Stacey Adams is down here, so there's that draw. I think Booker has done an event down here, but yeah, they're coming to Georgia now too, and that's please leave us alone. Like we normally like, especially like Democratic nominees, just I mean they would come here, but it wasn't like it's more like for show than anything because it was always a red state. But now that it's actually in play, like these people are going to be here all the damn time now.
Well, then the devil can leave Johnny alone.
He'll have plenty of Democratic candidates to play with. Trust me, I'm sure they're all going to come through here. All, I don't know, 50 of them at this point. Like, I don't know how many people they're going to let run in this race. Like, they're making the same mistake that Republicans made in 2015, which I advised against doing, which is having too many people run at once, because now you're going to end up in this situation where you're going to have the craziest mofo in the room, which is how Trump ended up with the nomination, as far as I'm concerned, is just being the loudest, craziest, brashest person in the room and just sucking all the air out of it. And somebody is going to be that in this Democratic field. I'm not sure who, because I don't think everybody's quite announced yet, but I think Bernie could actually take that place just because he's Bernie. I mean, it just automatically kind of sucks all the air out of the room.
Well, I don't know how he's even running as a Democrat, if he is even. As far as I know, and I looked at this when I made the video about him yesterday, The Hill told me that there's a rule, and Hannity's been talking about it, and Shapiro's been talking about it, and so many other pundits have been talking about it, that Bernie can't even run as a Democrat right now because he doesn't sit in office as a Democrat.
Yeah,
which I believe the rule was there to keep him from doing this.
Yeah, they definitely put that was like the fuck Bernie rule. But from what I understand, and it's very weird because the DNC operates kind of weirdly as opposed to like the RNC and the LP as far as how they kind of handle internal stuff. But I think the idea is that you have to like send in some kind of letter pledging that you will, if you get elected, you will serve as a Democrat. And I think the Vermont Democratic, their official party apparatus in Vermont has claimed him as a Democrat. Now, there's no like real like formal way to sign up as a Democrat, so I'm not entirely sure how you square that circle. But that's another reason why it's so funny that he's running, because they did institute that rule basically to keep him from running. But he's basically like, well, no, I'm going to do it anyway because I'm Bernie Sanders.
Well, and I wonder, too, because we all knew going into 2016 that even before the debates, even before everybody announced, even before Bernie got in, we all knew that the DNC was going to put Hillary into place. Mm-hmm. We all knew that. That was common knowledge at the time.
Yeah, my little conspiracy theory has always been that when Hillary stepped down to let Obama get the nomination, I think she made a deal with the DNC then to basically say, in 2016, 2015, you will give me the nomination. Like, I will step back this one time, but going forward, I will be your candidate. And I wouldn't be surprised, like, obviously that's my little conspiracy theory. I have no proof of that other than the fact that they did kind of buy the DNC. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the deal. And I mean, obviously we all knew, and that was why in 2015 there was like, you didn't have a wide field of Democratic candidates because everybody kind of knew that it was like, well, there's no point. It's going to be Hillary. So why am I going to waste my time and waste any kind of money trying to run against Hillary? And like Bernie was the only person that did it. And I guess he found out the hard way, I guess. Maybe not, because he's running again. So yeah, it's interesting that he actually did get into this race.
Well, and with the superdelegate system that the DNC has, I have to wonder if, do you think they have their nominee picked already?
It's a distinct possibility. And I know that when they did some rejiggering of the rules, they did some kind of stuff with the superdelegates. Like, again, the DNC operates really weird, so it's kind of hard to understand like how they actually, honest to God, pick their candidate for nomination for president. But I mean, there has always been kind of the superdelegate kind of shadiness going on, and I think they made some moves to kind of like in the first round of voting to kind of strip away some of the superdelegate power. But obviously, if it goes like a second and third round, then yeah, obviously the superdelegates can pick the nominee independent of any kind of primary voting that may have happened. So, like I said, they're weird. Like they run it real weird, and it's always been a little shady.
I want to change the rules so that I can just put super in front of my name, and that's just the be all end all. The super podcaster.
Yeah, and it's like no other party. And no other party does it like that. Like it's just they run it so odd. Like it's really weird and confusing.
Well, I know that the other candidates have been kind of lacking in the news this past week. Kamala Harris got herself in just a little bit of hot water, though, I noted. She had made a comment about smoking weed and how that came deeply from her Jamaican heritage, and that kind of pushed her Jamaican father off the edge a little bit. As far as I know, her Jamaican father is no longer supporting her bid for the presidency because she made these comments.
I didn't know he completely revoked it, but I mean, my whole point with her comments was like, you threw people in cages over weed. Like, no, you don't get a pass now. Like, no, that doesn't make up for your time as California AG and all the shit you pulled there. Like, no, I don't think she smokes weed, period, anyway. So, just the whole idea that you can whitewash what you did by saying that you smoked weed in college and listened to Biggie and Tupac, even though Biggie and Tupac were not out when you were in college. It's just gross, disgusting pandering, honestly. It's just she's so fake to me. She's so fake.
I'm curious too when I look at the field here with so many people populating in and so many people that don't have any sort of chance, like Gabbard we talked about earlier. What chance does Gabbard have to actually make it to the end, and why is she spending all this money to get this far when, again, like I say, I'm pretty sure that the DNC has their pick made already.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of like Tulsi. I mean, I love her foreign policy. I can't stand her domestic policy. But it is...
I figured you would.
But she's just... I don't know. Like I said, I don't know why this field is going to be so wide. Like, it doesn't seem very productive to me, because it's just... when it's going to end up, like I said, just like Republicans in 2015, when there's too many choices, like nobody really gains any traction. So I think it would have been a little better for them to self-edit. And I think now that Bernie is in the race, I think you will start to see some people, maybe not just yet, because obviously everybody kind of started running, but it's going to accelerate the rate of people dropping out. And so I think over the next... I mean, we'll probably make it through the second round of debates, and then people will start to kind of peel off and kind of fall away and stuff like that. And I think Tulsi will end up being part of that group of people that doesn't quite make it. Unfortunately, I would like to see her stay around, just because I would like to see her force everybody's hand on foreign policy, because nobody else is really talking about foreign policy. Everyone else is talking about domestic policy. But we'll see. We shall see. I don't really know how this is going to shake out.
I just wonder how they're going to organize the debates when all 47 members of the Senate are on the stage at the same time.
Well, from what I understand, and this also just shows how ridiculous this is it's like it's a 2-night thing, and so it's going to be a 2-night thing. They're doing 3 separate rounds, and I think they're going to be 2 nights each, at least as it stands right now. And what happens is everybody's name gets put into a pot, and then like they do half one night and half the other night. So you're not going to have everybody debating everybody. You're going to have like Group A debating within Group A, and then Group B debating within Group B. So it's like I said, it's going to be like some kind of crazy free for all. Like it's like the weirdest, dumbest system. But again, you have so many people that's like, you have to split this up into 2 nights. And I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, because everybody's not going to be debating everybody. So I don't know how you really consider this like a legitimate, proper primary debate.
Well, and I'm actually looking forward to coming through and seeing the debates too, because I want to see how everybody that's in the race tries to out Bernie, like so many of them tried to out Trump in the 2016. I mean, I stood proudly behind Scott Walker when he was governor of Wisconsin and the policy that he had here. But I know well, there are two reasons that he lost up here this past election cycle. I know one of the big reasons that he didn't make it to the presidency and he lost here in this last election cycle for him was because he tried to out Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Trump was, we're going to build a wall and we're going to put it all along the Mexican border. And then, for whatever stupid reason, he had this in his mind while Scott Walker was on, what the hell was he on? Meet the Press. He looked over to Chuck Todd and said, we need to put a wall on the Canadian border, too.
Yeah, Scott Walker kind of nuked his own self there because he was all right for a second. And then, obviously, everybody tried to go in with the Trump train. And now I think that's going to cost a lot of people their careers eventually. Because I don't know how you walk back from that once he's not president anymore. But, yeah, that was just everybody just trying to get on board with the whole Trump thing. It's like, you're ruining your career, people. Like, you understand that you're ruining your career.
Well, and, the anti-charismatic governor that we have now, Tony Evers, Walker was running neck and neck with him the entire night. And the only reason he lost that I can see right now is this mysterious pack of, was it 3,000 or 30,000 or I think it was 300,000 absentee ballots they found in Milwaukee at the last second. Had it not been for that Canadian comment, I don't think that would have changed anything, and I think you'd have walked all over Tony Evers. I'm pretty sure that killed his career right then and there.
Yeah, like I said, it just this throwing in your lot with Trump is not. There's not going to be any way to walk back from this once he's gone. So, if I was a Republican, I would be trying to stay as far away from this whole nuclear situation with Trump as I possibly could, just to save my own career.
I like Trump. I look at Trump. I look at what he's doing. I may not agree with everything that he's done. I can't get behind some of the things that he's done. But every decision that he makes and every law that he tries to invoke to try and get his decisions made gets put under the microscope, scrutinized, and analyzed to death, to the point that we're learning about things that we didn't know were there in the government. Things are getting decided in the Supreme Court. Things are going to the Supreme Court. Legislation is being revised and edited because he's there, because nothing that he can do is right, and they have to stop everything that he does. And the American public is getting involved for one of the first times in my lifetime.
I don't know how much the American public's getting involved. I think everybody's just kind of picked their side and they're just going to stick with it to the death. But, I mean, I guess there is something of an argument to be made of people being more engaged in the political process now and maybe learning how laws get made and how the Supreme Court works. But I don't know if that's going to be long lasting. I think it's a situational sort of thing.
I mean, how many people do you think knew before Trump was in how a Supreme Court justice got confirmed? I know they stopped teaching civics in school. When I was in 7th grade, we learned civics, and we learned that it was a presidential appointee, but that was all that I knew.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to answer that question, being something of a political nerd and a libertarian. We kind of concern ourselves with these sorts of things. But yeah, the whole Kavanaugh situation, I think, I don't know, maybe now people know how Supreme Court justices happen, I guess, or how nasty that can be. I mean, it certainly wasn't the first nasty confirmation proceeding ever. I mean, I think it was definitely the most nasty ever. Although one can make the argument that the Bork one was possibly worse, but I think I gotta hand it to the Kavanaugh one. Like that got ugly. Like that was some dark places. But I guess it also goes to show what kind of people you're dealing with in Congress too.
And it kind of showed what happens when you invoke the nuclear option when you don't really want to, because that's the only reason that that's legitimately the only reason that he got into the Supreme Court right now, is because Chuck Schumer decided to invoke the nuclear option to get Kagan in.
Yep.
And now that was something on the Republican side.
See, and that's once you ring that bell, it will always be rung again. So before you ring a bell, you better make sure that you're ready for it to stay rung.
But on the other side of that, too, I think that's part of the reason that in order to get this wall funding done, that we had to go to the nuclear option. I mean, there was a resolution that passed the House that had wall funding on the 20th of December, but it couldn't get through the Senate because Mitch McConnell refused to invoke the nuclear option, which I think was one of the best decisions that he ever made. He couldn't get the 60 votes to do that.
So he just left it be. And then, of course, there was bills before that to fund it, which Trump didn't like because they had different things in it that he didn't like. And it's just the whole border wall situation has just turned into such a fiasco. Like, no matter if you are for it or against it, like, you have to admit, like, this has just gotten completely out of hand. Like, you shut down the government for over a month. You've had these insane arguments and battles, and you still didn't get what you wanted. Like, Trump still did not get what he wanted. And it still remains to be seen if he ever will. And you've gone to all these extremes, and you may still end up with close to nothing. So, like, it's really been nuts.
I never thought I'd hear the day that you would have a criticism of having the government shut down for a month, except for the fact that it opened back up.
I was happy about it. We had fun, but again, at the same time, the flip side of that is that obviously money was still being spent, things were still being funded. It wasn't really a full shutdown, but we had our fun. We had a good time with that. We had Libertarian Christmas. It was fun. It was fun. The government was shut down. Like, the government was shut down. We were talking about pulling out of Syria and Afghanistan. Like, things were good, and I still don't know where we stand with Syria and Afghanistan because nobody talks about that anymore, sadly. But yeah, it was fun for a minute.
I've got to ask, because you brought it up, what does one do on Libertarian Christmas? How do you celebrate that?
You just make podcasts about it and you tweet about it. I tweeted it into existence. I did that. But yeah, it's always fun as libertarians to make fun of government shutdowns and stuff. But then there is that, like I said, there is that serious part of, yeah, there's still all these other problems, but it was nice to take a little break from them.
Well, we're at 96 minutes right now, so what do you say we start going through the closing routine of the show and get everybody out of here?
Okay.
Well, the last thing we do, because politics is so divisive, so angry, and everybody gets angry about it, is we try to end Ed's World on a positive note. So I want to know about what you do in your free time. What do you have for a hobby that is completely non-political and completely non-work related? It could be a video game you're playing, a new CD you've decided, music, plants.
I'm supposed to have one of those? But really, I try to read a lot, and a lot of what I read is kind of for content and stuff like that, but I'm trying to get more back into reading fiction again and just reading things kind of for pleasure and not necessarily just for content. Between work and doing this, it doesn't leave me a lot of free time for hobbies, so this kind of became my hobby, and now here we are. But yeah, I try to kind of decompress a little bit every day and kind of try to ignore the news cycle, whether it's like a read or I just go veg out and watch YouTube videos or just watch television or do something that doesn't involve me being on Twitter or reading political news.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Well, that's all I have for the night, and I'd like to thank you for coming in and providing us with some good hot takes and some good content before. To the audience, I'd like to remind you, if you like what you see, put the like button down on the video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you go over and find Jen's channel. It'll be linked in the description below. Leave some likes and a subscription over there. If you like this video, but time is a constraint, as it is in all of our lives, as we just talked about, remember, you can find Ed's World on the audio platforms. We are on iTunes, we are on Google Play, and we are on Stitcher. And Jen as well is on, I think you're on SoundCloud too, are you not?
Yeah. Let's see. I can use iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, and Spotify.
And we'll get some of those links in the description below this video, and they will be in the podcast audio version description as well. Jen, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitter. You can either search under Jen the Libertarian or Jen Monroe. You can find me, like I said, on all of those platforms. It's under Jen the Libertarian. I'm on pretty much every podcast platform you can possibly conceive of, so I'm sure you can find me. And yeah, those are probably about the best places to try to find me.
As we close out of this show, I will sign everybody off with the same sign off I put onto my videos, and that is, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Jen, you have last word.
Oh, well, I would just like to say this has been fun. I've enjoyed it, and I hope you guys enjoy watching it, enjoy listening to it, and yeah, I hope to see you guys around.
Take care, everyone.
So there it is, my interview with Ed from Ed's World. I hope you guys did enjoy it. Like I said, we do touch on a couple of topics that I don't normally touch on, so I thought it would be interesting for you guys to have too. So, as always, if you did make it this far, thank you. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.